Welcome, everyone, to another edition of SCRC's Let's Talk Caregiving. I'm your host, Roberto Velasquez, President and CEO of Southern Caregiver Resource Center. Today, we have a very special guest who is going to help us learn about a topic that is very much a taboo topic in society, which is death and dying, end-of-life choices. It's a topic that is so difficult to talk about that even in my own family, we've had challenges with that topic of death and dying. So let me introduce to you Dr. Susan Guess. Susan is a doctor of pharmacy and serves on the advisory board and as a volunteer with End of Life Choices California, which is a nonprofit group of trained volunteers who support people facing and planning for their ends of life. Susan and other volunteers provide guidance on what options are available as people face life-threatening illnesses. This includes educating people about palliative care versus hospice, legal rights to stop treatment, advanced care directives, and information about the California End of Life Act, which was signed into law in 2016. Welcome, Susan, to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I'm so glad you're here. This is such a difficult topic. In my family, our experience was very challenging when it had to do with my father and his end of life. He didn't believe in talking about death and dying.
Mm-hmm.
And it made it very challenging. He didn't have an advance direct. So when he suffered a massive heart attack and then was unconscious on life support for about 7 days, my brothers and sisters and my mother and I, we all had to come together to make decisions to his treatment, end of life, and man, was that difficult. So your organization helps families work with this, and
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm just so happy that you're here, and maybe share a little bit about your nonprofit group and how you work with families.
Yep. End of Life Choices California is a group that you said. We get calls, we get emails, we get people who we raise the issue with, and they know we're in the business. And so we get questions all the time. What do I do? Here I am at this tough point in my life, and how do I plan? What's available to me now? And so we're constantly educating people about what their choices are, including the medical aid in dying, which is the word for the End of Life Act in California. And it's amazing how many people say, I thought I had to go to Oregon to take an opportunity to determine when I can end my life if I'm already on my way to dying. And it's been legal in California since 2016. So that's 8 years now.
No, and personally, I don't know of any individuals who have participated in the um, MAID or medical aid in dying program that you're referring to. This is again something that is passed into law in 2016, and maybe I don't know, share with our audience what is the process for getting to this point? Do you have to have a certain diagnosis? Does the person have to have the wherewithal to make these decisions on their own?
Mhm.
Is there surrogates that make those decisions for the individual?
So the law is very clear, and in California and 10 other states, it's pretty similar. You have to be a resident of California, and you have to be diagnosed with an illness that's going to take your life within 6 months or less. And of course, that's always an estimate from a physician. But there have to be two physicians who will agree that you have 6 months or less to live and you're of clear mind of what you want to do. Now, for the patients who are having thought difficulties, which a lot of people do just in illness or specifically with dementia, they are not excluded as long as they can clearly express their wishes so that two physicians hear them say consistently, I am interested in ending my life with medical assistance.
I'll tell you that conversation be very difficult. How do you and or your volunteers that you work with at your nonprofit work with families to help them understand the process, educate them? Because we hear of hospice, we hear of palliative care, but this is like a whole different step, or is it part of that?
It's definitely part of that. So I like to present the idea as you have a palette of options. And so you can continue with full bore treatment for whatever your condition is. You can decide to stop treatment and let the disease take its course. You can go into palliative care, which supports you in any illness stage with really good physician, nursing, social support. You can go into hospice, and then that end of life option as part of the palette is the medical aid in dying. You don't have to wait till the very end to get the medical aid in dying medication. You don't have to say, I'm ready in the next 2 days to drink a cocktail and to end my life. You can go through the process. And having been a pharmacist who consulted with people when they got the medication, I would oftentimes meet these people a year and a half before they used the medication. And they would just be a sigh of relief, almost a joy that this was taken off. Option was available to them, and the relief you could feel in the room that it was in the closet, stuck away if they should need it. But a third of people who get the medication never use it. They just get that relief that they have some control in the situation if they should need it. And that's huge in a situation where you have very little control.
That's really interesting that people will get to this point and not utilize the medication
Hmm.
that is specifically for terminating someone's life. You know, you mentioned something that's really interesting to me. The individual must be of sound mind.
Hmm.
So, we work with a lot of family caregivers that are providing care to somebody with Alzheimer's, dementia. And of course, when they come to us, they're often the person that they're caring for is pretty advanced in their dementia. Um, and it doesn't mean that they can't 100% make decisions, but they're needing now somebody to provide them with support, care, redirection, help. They're having severe memory problems. Is it at that point too late for an individual to participate in something like this, or is this why it's so important to prepare these advanced directives early on before you get anything? You know, everybody always waits
Yeah.
to the last minute.
Exactly. So I think it's the latter of what you said. We really need to plan for dementia early on. And there are dementia advanced care directives that are very helpful, that go down to details of, if I were in this particular situation, like I can't recognize my loved ones. I need 24-hour care. In that situation, do I want to live as long as I can live, treat me but not do aggressive, or allow me to die a natural death? And so there are step by step questionnaire type answers that you can do and plan ahead of time. Like for me personally, if I'd have to think about it. If I can't recognize my loved ones and I'm refusing food, and turning away, please don't feed me. Let me naturally pass away from not eating and drinking, which in a lot of care settings, people will force food and feel like that's loving. But if I've told you ahead of time that if that's my scenario, I don't wish to continue, then you have a clear idea of what I want. So that's one thing is the advanced care dementia advanced care directive. Your other side of it is if again the person can say, I clearly want to pass away. Please give me the medication. then a doctor could approve it. The tricky part is they also have to have an illness that will cause them to die in 6 months or less. And there's a lot of dementia people suffering from dementia that are going to live many, many years. So they don't qualify in that regard. So we do have an option in that case, and I don't know if you've heard about this, is that Switzerland accepts people to get assistance in dying, and you can apply to them. And even though you have dementia, they will review your case and perhaps accept you for that. Now, people say,
Wow,
"Oh,
that's
I can't."
really interesting.
I know, and they
Yeah.
say Switzerland's expensive to get to, and in perspective, it's about $11,000 to go through the entire process with those physicians. And if you think about memory care, that is often, anywhere from $10 to $17,000 a month. So some people have taken that course, and you don't have to have a life-ending illness in Switzerland. You can decide to end your life, and if you qualify from their physician review, then you would qualify.
Susan, I would imagine that there are families that you work with or you've talked to about this process or who've reached out to your organization that are conflicted. They that of course it's important to do the advanced care, advanced directives, and powers of attorney and all those things. You're not able to make decisions anymore, and of course we know that the earlier you do it, the better, and you can always make changes to it later on. But I'm sure that you've come across families who are conflicted, maybe their religious beliefs. I'm not trying to say you try to convince them to, but do you actually have support from your organization to talk about people that then that's not the right choice for you or something? Do you work with clergy? Do you work with other organizations that can help provide them with additional education?
We do a lot of education and outreach. And so we have a big program, a big presence in the synagogues. A couple of our board members there's a rabbi and people who have connections. So we do that. We're always talking with families and extended families and saying, have them call us, or we'll send an email that kind of summarizes things. And we have a lot of support material that makes it more approachable, like a sort of facts versus myths page that I love, that can give people a better understanding. We're always available to talk with the family or meet with people and talk about it. Sometimes it's just giving the person permission that they can do what they want, and how to work with their family to say, this is really important to me, that that I have this option, and how to use the words. We just talk it through with them.
This is great. And I think the key also is the options, right? Like you say, some people actually get prescribed the end of life medication or
Mhm.
cocktail, as you called it, but they never use it. So I think it's a relief to know that I have this option. I may not use it, but legally I can if I wanted to. And I guess there's peace of mind in just knowing that you have an option as well, even if you don't go forward with something like this, right?
Exactly. And only 1 in 4 Californians know that this is a legal option. That's mind-boggling to me that 8 years after this has been in effect, I still run across the people who say, "I thought I had to move to Oregon to do this." And so it's a passion to me to just go up to people and say, "Yeah, this is what I'm volunteering with. Did you know this is illegal? This is a legal option in California." And most people say, "No, I've never heard of that."
I mean, again, topic end of life, even just talking about hospice and end of life, and no longer doing treatments to try to keep you alive, are so difficult to talk about. When you are talking with families about it, do they usually reach out to you, or are you you say you do outreach. So you're out in the community, you're sharing facts, you're sharing information, you're letting people know about the programs or services that you offer, correct?
Correct. So we've done library outreach and a lot of senior residents living the synagogues that we've gone to. And of course, I would love to get into more of the Christian Catholic based areas because we have had people who their priest has blessed their decision to do this. And it's a tough call in that scenario. I was raised Catholic, and it's considered a sin to
Hmm.
take your life. And yet, every signal is that you are going to die in the next, say by the time you're thinking of taking the medication in the next week or two. And, it, it's going to happen anyway. And I
Yeah.
know that that's a tough call. But I do want people to know it's an option. And like I said, that relief of knowing if it gets so dire and suffering, I have that option. It's there. What I would like to let people know is that it becomes almost a joyful celebratory thing. We didn't talk about what this looks like when you take medical aid in dying. Somebody gets a cocktail. They know they're going to take it. We gather all the family or friends or whoever they want there with them. I've been with people who had nobody but me, but we sit there and visit and relive and memories and laughing happens. And then because there's a whole hour between taking some pre-medications that prevent nausea and vomiting and the actual medication, so you know what's coming. And then at that point, you say, are you ready? Are you still wanting to do this? And they're usually like, oh, yes, I am so done. This is my time. And they drink the cocktail, and everybody knows that this was the time to say goodbye and that they got to choose their time. And I have seen some beautiful, beautiful, just lovely memories about this. And I would much rather have that than what my father went through, where he didn't plan in advance and he knew he was dying, but he just ended up having a heart attack and nobody got to say goodbye. So, and he
Yeah.
waited to do
Yeah.
hospice on the day of his death. I mean, we were signing papers instead of spending time. It just was very sad. And it makes me passionate to do all this work ahead of time.
Yeah, and I think again, the planning in advance for so many families, it's kind of like the last thing on their mind, because everybody
Hmm.
is, in our society is geared towards how are we going to help that person live, right? Which is a good thing, right? I mean, everything's for living, for to be full of joy and energy and youthfulness, right? And yet we all of us 100%. There's what's that saying, there's only two real things in life. One is you got to pay taxes, and the other is dying, which I'm not trying to make a joke out of it, but the truth is that we do. I mean, we're all born and we're all going to pass away, and to know our options, it's good to know when should we choose to go into that direction. I think for families, for family caregivers, for individuals who are educating, knowing more. Knowledge is power, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it got opportunity to consciously make a decision or make decisions. And for some people, it's not the right thing to do. For many people, I'm sure it's not the right thing to do for them, personal beliefs, and everybody, of course, you respect that. And it's also for some, you respect the fact that it is something that they would prefer to do, and they have that legal choice, something of this nature at the end of life.
And one thing you mentioned was that our goal is often to live as long as we can. A lot of physicians feel hesitant to mention that medical aid in dying is an option. They feel, and I've spoken to them about this, they feel like their patient might feel like they're giving up on them, or that it's not their place because their place is to prolong life. But do no harm might mean don't allow the suffering to go longer by not mentioning this until it's too late. A lot of patients have said to me, I wish my doctor had mentioned this earlier. And so I am often educating physicians about how to talk about this as, like I said, part of the palette of options.
I'll tell you, Susan, physicians and their role in end of life or diagnosis. I mean, I know even with working with a lot of family members with Alzheimer's disease, even giving that diagnosis of this individual has Alzheimer's or some other, kind of progressive degenerative type of cognitive disease is so difficult for them to give because it's almost like you say, a death sentence in a way. But it's also really important for the families to understand what they're going to start going through, how to get resources. So the diagnosis is incredibly important, and yet it is very challenging for a physician to do, even with the word Alzheimer's, which is a lot more common, of course, than it used to be, 20, 25 years ago. I mean, they even now have movies where people have dementia and Alzheimer's and I'm Still Alice and all these others that are talking about and showing, people going through Alzheimer's and dementia. Again, it comes down to back to the education, the understanding of what you can and cannot do, and having options and opportunities. Again, not for everybody, but it's good to know what your options are.
And End of Life Choices California is here to answer any questions and just explore without any sales point. I have no commitment to convincing somebody to use medical aid in dying. I'm equally happy to have them explore palliative care and, do other things. I just want the education available.
I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, Susan, for sharing, again, a very important topic that needs more discussion. I mean, we could do a whole nother segment and bring in some doctors and get opinions and religious leaders and everything else. Of course, we don't want to make this a political thing. It's basically a discussion about what options people have. Like you said,
Palette, like a color palette?
Yeah, your color palette of different options that people have. Well, that's all the time we have left for this edition of Let's Talk Caregiving. To hear more of our podcasts, follow us on your favorite podcasting platforms or visit our website at scrc.care. I want to thank our very special guest, Dr. Susan Guest, and our audience for tuning in. If you're providing support to a loved one, you don't have to do this alone. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. To connect to our programs and services, visit our website at scrc.care or call us at 1-800-827-1008. If you live outside of San Diego and Imperial counties, visit caregivercalifornia.org and connect to the Caregiver Resource Center nearest you. To support our efforts and make a tax-deductible donation, please go to scrc.care and click on the Donate tab. And remember, SCRC is here for you, caring for those who care for others.